CALI, the Center for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. And I have on the line with me Ron Staudt, who is a professor of law at Chicago Kent, and Andrew Medeiros. And Andrew, what exactly is your title?
I'm an Access to Justice Fellow here at CAGT.
See, I would have guessed like an assistant director or something. So Andrew is working with us to make this all go right. All of you right now are muted, and that's for your own safety. So there isn't unnecessary feedback or background dog barkings, things like that. But very quickly at the end of this, I'll unmute everybody for the question and answer part. If you have headphones, those are better to use than just talking to the microphone directly on your computer without headphones, because what happens is then my voice or anybody else's voice coming out of the computer goes back into the microphone on the computer, and that's why you get some of that sort of echo effect. But we'll deal with that later. So this is an overview, a very quick overview of the A2J Clinical Course Project, which is a joint project of CALI, Chicago Kent. It's as a result of a grant that we've received from the Legal Services Corporation. Let me just dive right into it. We have an RFP out, a request for proposals, from 4 clinical law professors or law professors, in which the goal is for them to teach essential lawyering competencies while increasing access to justice nationwide. Now that's a nice, interesting, and a bold statement, but I hope that you'll agree that that the way we've constructed this, it will result in exactly that sort of thing. This round is a 3 to 5 person pilot, which is to say we have stipend money for 5 clinical professors, some travel money to bring them either here or wherever we decide to meet, for project management and other roles, as well as money to pay an assistant, essentially a technical assistant, to help with the A2J authoring part. The faculty will test A2J Author as a teaching tool while introducing their students to the theory and practice of e-lawyering. Ron will go into greater detail about that in a second. And the faculty members will develop and share their course materials. In other words, how did you do that? In what manner, so that we can share those results with others. This is not a one-off. This is not an attempt to just do 5 and write a white paper and be done with it. And that's why CALI is involved. Our goal is eventually to roll this tool out, A2J Author, to all 200 law schools, all members of CALI, to any law professors that want to use A2J Author as a method or as a tool for teaching legal processes, electronic legal processes, e-lawyering processes, and what that all means to their students. And so this is the sharp, pointy end of what we hope to be a very significant, world-changing project. I'm immensely excited by this. I've been working on the A2J project for over 10 years. Started out as a sabbatical that I took in 2000 to help Illinois Legal Aid Online develop a content management system for their statewide website. And so we've come a long way, baby, and I expect that we have even further to go to do something here. All right. So what is A2J Author? I'm gonna give an immensely short, a very short demo of this. It's not intended to teach you. It's intended to, in case nobody has seen it or don't know exactly what we're talking about. And there's a further caveat. This is A2J Author 4. I will tab over to A2J Author 4 here. This is A2J Author 4, which is to say the version that is currently in use by over 30 states, which over 800 court forms have been automated by legal aid organizations, used a couple of million times in the last few years. We are in the process of rewriting this from scratch in a different programming language so that primarily it can work on things like iPhones and iPads. This version runs in Flash, which I don't know if you follow these things, you probably don't, but Apple doesn't run Flash software on their operating systems and their devices. And by creating a web-based authoring system and delivery system, we would greatly expand the capabilities of future growth for this. So the basic idea behind A2J Author is for a non-programmer, which is to say a lawyer or a law student in this case, to be able to automate a legal process for someone who is representing themselves or who is attempting to fill out a court form for themselves, a pro se. The further restriction or the further goal of this project was that a typical pro se is someone who may not, English may not be their first language, may not have a high school degree, is likely in a very stressful situation because they're dealing with some sort of legal problem. Back in 2004, when we were designing this, the thinking was also that they may not be familiar with technology, or they, they may be coming to a website that but they don't spend a lot of their time on the web. That's less true now as more and more people find the web. They use the web for all sorts of things. And so this design is intended to be calming, lots of white space. It breaks a process, even a complicated process, down into single steps, one at a time. It's often been compared to TurboTax, if any of you are familiar with that. But it's intended to walk people through literally one step at a time, even relatively complex processes. So I'm not starting at the very beginning. I'm sort of jumping in the middle because I want to show a couple of different question types. And this is a perfect example. So do you have court papers that require an answer or response in the next 5 days? This particular interview is an online intake form. So so what's going on is there's a whole bunch of questions at the front of the form that are sort of like triage. They're intended to, if you have an emergency, which this question asks about, do you have court papers that need a response? And I say, well, yes. Well, then it's going to right away say, well, your situation is an emergency. You shouldn't use this form because we can't get back to you fast enough. You need to call us and deal with it in that way. And there's even a little explanation here of a learn more. Why can't I complete the form if it is an emergency? And it's like, well, once you complete this application, someone will have to call you back, so on and so forth. All right. So rather than just accept that, I'm going to hit back and say, well, no, I don't have an emergency of that kind. Do you have a hearing scheduled? Again, that's another a fork in the road question. So I'm going to say, no, I don't have that. Do you have you received a writ of possession? Now, here's an example where the author has said, well, if I ask them about their writ of possession and they don't know what a writ of possession is, they could go off to some legal dictionary or have to find a question. But why don't I just have a little pop-up that says, if a landlord wins an eviction, the court issues a writ of possession which requires you to leave your home. Oh yeah, I got a letter, right? So there's a little bit of, or there's an opportunity here for the authors, the lawyers, to create plain language guidance for people filling out forms. That is a very, that is almost as important, or that's a very important aspect of A2J Author. Was it's not just here's a form on a screen, fill it out. It's what are the places where people get stuck, where they incorrectly fill out forms or do things wrong or don't complete things correctly, and can we provide some guidance at that point such that they get through this process? All right, so I'm going to say no and get on to a question that actually asked me something that I can show you something else here. Has your child been suspended? Are you currently in jail or prison? If I said yes, it says, well, we can't help you. Are you contacting us because you need help with a criminal charge or traffic tickets? This is a legal aid organization. They don't do that. So this would be a fork in the road to say, here's a link to go to perhaps another website that might help you. Finally, we get to a point where you say, well, do we know you or have we never contacted you before? And it's another fork. I'm going to say I've never applied for help. Do you have a working phone number? I'm going to say yes, because they have to call you back to verify this information in this particular situation. And then there's the terms of service that are coming up. If you understand these, click yes. here's your guide. In this case, they've named her Ayla, which I think is cute, and you have to choose, a male or female. The reason why they ask that is I've already run through this one, so that's why you already see them. But the software provides you with a avatar that represents you, the pro se, you, the client. Sorry, bad choice of words. You, the person who's filling out this form. Say continue. If you've been known by any other names, you can see there's all sorts of examples of things that lawyers and legal aid people know that can complicate a situation that aren't strictly data that's being collected to be put into a form. And you can build these things. I think Ron will talk about this, and he uses a great word, the word heuristics. You can build these things into A2J Author, based on the experience or the expertise that legal aid people have. I'm going to say no. And here's where we start to get into the details. Now, what's going on is I'm going to answer questions and walk down this path to this distant graphic of a courthouse. But for purposes of this demo, I'm going to jump out of the running of the interview and show you just a very little bit of the authoring environment. It looks complicated, but we found that we can train our young tech hipster savvy students pretty quickly in this. They take to it. It's kind of fun, actually, where you can build. This is essentially a flowchart of the entire interview, where you can click on the questions and edit the text of the questions, and you can see the results of what's going to show up in the pop-up bubble there. You can change the buttons so that they go to different destinations, essentially, the arrows from one question to another. I won't get into it, but I'll explain that you can do some very sophisticated things with this, with conditional branching. If their income is greater than a certain amount, and they live in a county, and they're in a domestic violence situation, whatever the collection of questions previously asked are, you can branch multiple ways based on that. And that's a powerful feature of this. I don't have a demo of it in this particular interview, but you can also insert graphics for people to look at, or videos. One of the online intakes that was created has a video of a judge saying, welcome to the court, or something like that. And that's all I've got to say about this. We will be providing training for anybody who participates in this clinic project, both the faculty and the students. The students obviously will have to learn how best to use this, and they will be partnered up with a legal aid organization that needs a form to be automated, and our technical assistant, who we will pay for as part of this project, will also be someone that is already familiar with A2J Author. So let me go back to the PowerPoint here. And that's the wrong one. No, wait, I wanted the other one. Sorry about that. Give me a moment. No, I am on the right one. And I'm on to the next slide, and I'm going to ask Ron to pick it up from here. And Ron, just say next slide when you want me to change the slides. All right?
Great. Thanks, John. Well, the part that I'm going to try to work through now is just the educational piece that I've been working on in conjunction with our effort to bring law students and legal aid organizations together for two purposes. One, to teach students about emerging competencies that we think they need in order to function in today's increasingly digital workplace on the one hand, and the need of legal aid organizations on the other, to have effective tools to deliver information, guidance, and and tools to their prospective clients and or website users to help them work through the access to justice barriers that they face trying to represent themselves. So for the last 3 years I've been teaching a course called Justice and Technology Practicum. The key pieces of the course are a series of performances that students are required to complete that make the course sort of a hybrid clinic, legal writing, and classroom experience. So students are required to do observation of low-income people, self-represented people who are working their way through the justice system on their own. We have a help desk at our local courthouse where this kind of assistance to low-income people who come to the computers at this help desk gives students an opportunity to observe the type of people who will be using the tools that they build. Each of the students are paired up with a legal aid lawyer, sometimes in Illinois, sometimes in other states. We've done projects in Idaho, Montana, Minnesota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and a whole series of them here in Illinois. As part of the initial effort, they have to do a very careful scope document to define the work that the legal aid expert and the student are going to do together. Then they do a deep and careful, thorough, and somewhat typical research memo on the law and procedure that are governing the particular activity or the particular form or the particular project that they're doing. This is where we say heuristics, John. In addition to the law and procedure, because we put the students in the field out and working and observing people, they also get to experience or understand or identify sort of the justice problem faced by these customers of justice, and sometimes that's not written in the law or in the civil procedure rules. It's a way a certain judge usually handles a case, or a way or a place that people have to go in order to get the forms or whatever it is. So we build in sort of that lore or heuristics that good legal aid lawyers, for example, know about how justice works in their area. That's part of the research memo. Then they do a wireframe or a paper version of the interview that John showed you a little bit ago. Come back.
Come back, sorry.
And then do a guided interview in a hot docs template and a final report. So those are the steps that students work through in a typical semester in the practicum. And on the slide are some projects that we've done before. You can go ahead now.
Okay.
Sometimes people who are not familiar with this process say, well, you know, I don't think students can get through that in a semester. And we found that they can. A key to that accomplishment is to have a very narrow project so that it's really clear what they have to do, and to work through the steps I just described to you in a way that creates a partnership between the student and the lawyer, supervised by a clinical professor, in this case myself, and frequently with a fair amount of technical help from people who know the software and know how to get things done in the software. Next slide. We think this is a powerful educational opportunity because it really helps us attack things that are not really addressed by most law school curricula today. The deep dive into law and procedure and heuristics is something that students can get in a variety of different places, but we provide that sort of core experience as part of this course. You also get exposure in working through the policy and ethical issues raised by legal services delivery and technology. Many of you have dedicated your lives to providing full service legal representation to low-income people who otherwise would not be able to get a lawyer. And the idea of providing instead a computer tool that someone could use on their own or with intermittent assistance or unbundled assistance is an approach to delivering legal services and to dealing with the gap in access to justice support that raises issues that we need to address and pay attention to and talk through. The kinds of work that the students do to complete a project is more a transactional kind of thinking and problem solving than litigation problem solving. What I mean by that is, instead of having a specific client that you work to achieve a specific end, what you are doing instead is looking at all the potential clients or customers of this product that might need a fee waiver or might need a set of pleadings for a simple divorce. And so you have to think not so much about what a specific path or a specific fact pattern will produce, but rather you have to think sort of like a transactional lawyer does. What are all the possible things that could go wrong? What are all the possible people that could come to this who don't belong here? And so that kind of thinking is much more transactional than it is litigation when you think about a problem-solving framework. And we think we have a framework within which to delve into key new competencies that emerging law practice requires. On the personal legal services side, we're looking at the e-lawyering initiatives that are beginning to be placed as a sort of as a competition to LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer, where lawyers are working with technology to help their clients more effectively solve legal problems at a much more efficient spot in terms of the price point, which includes unbundling and other kinds of technology tools involving Web 2.0 and cloud practice and so on. At the institutional level, large firms are using alternate fee arrangements and automating huge deals. AI and computer-assisted document review is moving from permitted and soon will become, we believe, required ways to handle enormous e-discovery tasks involving millions of emails and so on. There are new tools that provide these kinds of AI and analytic devices to lawyers that are being used by large law firms like Neota and Kayak, and old standbys like HotDocs that are being used to automate corporate practice and other kinds of deals that students will be exposed to by working through these processes on their own. Next slide. You.
That's me. All right. Thanks, Ron. So get your questions ready. We'll unmute you in just a second. So the responsibilities for this particular project, always forgot to turn off my phone, we're going to have a couple of meetings late February in Chicago, or if we pick somebody in Florida or Arizona, maybe we'll go visit them instead. And to attend a meeting during the CALI conference, which will be in Chicago in June, specifically June 15th, which is a Saturday. We'd like even the people to speak or be ready to talk about their experiences with the project. You have to develop a course kit and give us the copyright so that we can share it with everybody else. That means a teacher's manual, your syllabus, and any other materials that you might develop that would be helpful or useful to other people who would want to teach the same type, the same design of class that you taught. We know that not all these classes are, it's not a cookie cutter, and so we know that what we're hoping to get out of faculty is the materials that they created for their particular flavor of cookie, I guess, so that other people could either use it whole as a starting point to build their own class, or can take the pieces apart and use those in a sort of a course commons around this idea. You have to teach a class in the fall of 2013 where the students use A2J and create guided interviews with a legal aid organization, and we have a website set up where we'll help you find a legal aid organization locally or not locally, virtually local, I guess, that has a need for a form or for a guided process to be automated. Obviously, the students have to give that, sign their copyright in their work product for that to the legal aid organization so that they can take it and make use of it on their website. And then we're going to expect you to provide some reflection, give us feedback in a written form so that we can improve this process. because as I mentioned before, we want to grow this into something big and world-changing. At least that's our goal. So what are the benefits here? Well, the benefits are that we're going to have, the benefits to you are that there's a sample course kit at A2JClinic.classcaster.net, and you can, there will be a button there that basically is, that basically says I can clone this entire website, and this website contains all the materials that Ron has used in his class. So if you needed a starting point, that would be a way to do that. Like I mentioned, the project managing databases. We provide support and training materials for how to learn A2JAuthor and Hot Docs, which is the document assembly tool that is used to assemble the documents after you finish A2J. $5,000 in compensation for the law professor, $3,000 to hire a technical consultant, somebody that either you can provide or we've got a list of names for that, as well as covering your travel expenses for the meetings. So I can Alt-Tab over to the sample website. I think I need to get out of PowerPoint first. Should have had this preloaded there, John. And there it is. And now I'm going to go through and unmute everybody. And if you have any questions, you can either raise your hand.
A2J, it's like a clinical course project, and they were looking for some.
Okay, we can hear you speaking now. If you're in the room and speaking with the thing on. So if you have any questions, go ahead and speak up. If this doesn't work, I'll mute everybody and wait for your hands to be raised.
I'm open to it.
Some way that could be
Judith, I see that you have your hand raised.
My meeting, so when I log in, so at least they can log in, and I'm not sure what it is, so I'll watch the webinar.
This is always the fun part of GoToWebinar. I can hear you all speaking in your room, so if you have any questions, shout them out.
I was like, oh, perfect. And reminding me, it was all on the brain cell. Yeah, that was, I'm like, yeah.
The executive has done the sabbatical one to develop a lot of stuff for Illinois.
All right, I muted a couple of you because I saw that there was quite a lot of noise coming over. So if you have a question, raise your hand. If you don't know how to raise your hand, it's a little hard to show you because the interface that I can see, well, there's a button there that says raise hand, basically. Becky, I see that you raised your hand. Did you have a question? If you're speaking, we can't hear you. There's a chat box where you could type your question, if that will work. Hello? Becky, can you hear me now?
I see Becky actually just typed it in as a question, not as a chat. So I have it here. She asked, are we supposed to use the course kit to draft a proposal that's due on Thursday or create something completely unique?
You don't have to use the course kit to submit an application, or to respond to the request for proposals. The course kit is what you will use it's optionally what you can use to construct the materials for your course. So all you have to do is to apply is to send us a notice with your CV and the name of the course that you are either teaching, in which you will integrate A2J, or the course that you plan to teach in the fall. Did I forget anything, Andrew?
No, that covers it. I think the one thing I'd add is the course kits are really something that we will work with you to develop. So we'll talk about what Ron has done, what a couple other professors that we've talked have done, and see about ways that you can use those or develop your own ideas to use A2JAuthor to best suit your students.
Great.
Yep.
Go ahead. Anybody have another question? I heard somebody talking.
Mm-hmm.
You want to type, if sound is a problem at your end, you can type the question into the question box, and Andrew will repeat it for me because I'm trolling the attendee list to make sure nobody's raising their hand or something like that. If you want to send me an email, jmayer at
Everybody
gmail.com.
has this was.
I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, no, I think it can be consolidated.
Becky's actually also asked, does the whole class get matched up with one legal aid, or is it a student assigned to one legal aid organization?
I'm not a fan of his as far as
Well, that's an interesting question because the way I thought of this is that each student is matched up to for their own project, but I wouldn't be against the idea that multiple students working on one project, you know, as long as the educational goals are met, you know, of the project being of sufficient complexity and size for that to happen. Ron, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, our experience over the last 3 years is usually to assign a student, one student to a single project with a legal aid lawyer. However, we have, this semester, we have a pair of students that are working together. And I agree with John. You can imagine a team working with a legal aid organization to handle a larger project that had several forms, and the team could work as a group. Our first time through, we did all our projects with Illinois Legal Aid Online and had one lawyer there who was their forms manager, who worked with each of the students on a different project. But there are many ways to think of this.
Excellent. Ron, there's a question by Virgil. I'm assuming that he typed it because he doesn't have a microphone. Unless you can hear me, Virgil, you can speak up, but I'll just repeat it. This course must be form-based. So I think he's asking, you know, do they have to create court forms?
No, actually, the content that legal aid organizations across the country have been building for their educational responsibilities on their websites includes forms like maybe a fee waiver or a response to a forcible entry complaint. But that also include the kind of interview that John showed you in the introduction here, which doesn't produce a form. It's an intake interview that guides potential clients of legal aid into the intake process or to alternative resources as appropriate. That would be fine. There are others that are purely informational, like what kind of options do I have if I'm a victim of domestic abuse, and some states like Illinois have 3 or 4 different options that you might choose, and depending on your circumstances, one might be better than another. That produce an informational flyer of some kind, or a referral to a website where more information might be available. All those are appropriate.
Very good. Virgil tells me that he doesn't have a microphone. That's why he was so shy sounding. Good. Well, before we break,
Are these answers getting through to the folks on the?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. Good.
And we're recording this as well, so we'll post the recording someplace where you can find it, I guess. And so if your colleagues couldn't make it to this and want to watch the first 20 or 25 minutes or so where we talked about this, that would be perfectly fine. That's the goal. Ron, can you think of any other questions that, I'll pull the faculty flip on you. Are there any questions they should have asked?
Well, we on the ClassCaster model course page, with Andrew's help, we put up some frequently asked questions that you can see on the screen that John is displaying, and all those might be something that you could imagine exploring. And nobody asked those, but maybe because they can see that we've already answered them in various ways.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question. Must it involve other agencies? Can the project be for intakes that take place in law clinics?
Actually, that's a good question. So as a broad project, the project that's going to blot out the sun that John is interested in, where we hope that every law school has a clinic involving the construction of material for low-income people that they can access on the web. The answer is that would be perfectly appropriate and useful and an effective way to sort of, in our business we used to call that eating your own dog food. Preparing a tool for your own use that you find appropriate. The only hesitancy I'd have about that is that the Legal Services Corporation, through their Technology Innovation Project, has made a grant to Idaho, and Idaho has contracted with CALI and Chicago Kent to administer this process. And the Legal Services Corporation wants the process to produce content for legal aid organizations across the country. And so I think if you did that, maybe that could be one of your projects, but you at least should have a project or two or three with some of your students that are being focused on the Legal Services Corporation delegate agencies that have needs across the country that we can match you up with for the process. So the answer is yes and yes. Good.
So LSC is paying the freight. We need to serve our master. That's in my mind totally appropriate. I want to reiterate that CALI is going to support the use of this tool outside of this grant, which is to say it doesn't involve this particular RFP, but you can still use this tool and still gain access to our support tools. We'll be providing online training and use it in your course. You just don't have to do other types of work that we listed in the faculty requirements, and you don't get paid a stipend for that. We had another question. Are we supposed to know ahead of time exactly what forms or instructional materials we'll be creating and with whom we'll be working? And the answer is no, you don't have to know that ahead of time. The whole point of this is that you will come to know who you will be working with or who your students will be working with, and you will develop these instructional materials or incorporate them into your existing class. And we want to learn, and we want your learning to instruct us in how well that works for future iterations of this project. Okay. Okay, so projects that would be synergistic, useful to the law school clinic, only if it can be used by legal aid offices. It might be too simplistic an evaluation. It's more like if you have multiple students in your class, at least some of them should be working on a project that is LSC legal aid oriented for the purposes of this grant. All right, it's coming up on 3:45, which is about 45 minutes. I think I've covered all the questions in the question box. Andrew, did I miss anything?
I actually see one more here. Janelle asks, how much information do you want in the letter of intent? Will there be a second round of persons invited to submit more detailed proposals?
There won't be a second round. Provide as much information as you think is necessary. I'm not sure how to answer that other than to say, describe your class, your situation, provide your CV, and we'll get back to you if it comes down to needing to query you to make sure that it's going to be a good fit.
I'll add, we will take the time to talk to everybody that submits an application. So it's not like you're just going to send off your CV and never hear from us again. We'll talk to you. We'll talk about what your school's doing and how it's going to work for you before making decisions about any clinics that we accept.
Well said. Ron, is there anything else that you want to say before we sign off?
No, I think that was great. I appreciate everybody spending a little time with us today, and I hope that we build a little excitement in your neck of the woods, and we look forward to hearing from you.
I actually see one more question just popped up from Virgil. He wants to know how many credits your course is, Ron.
I do a 4-credit course that does both a classroom component, a field observation, and then the construction of these A2J interviews. And then to the extent that students get excited about this and want to continue, I do a 2- or 3-credit course at students' selection for a second semester so they can continue working on their projects or add additional projects. That second course, the Justice and Technology Practicum 2, is much thinner in terms of the classroom component. Most of the classroom component there really involves students meeting together once a week to report on their progress and meet with our technical support people. And then we do some field trips. Usually, because it's in the spring, we'll go to the ABA Tech Show and meet some of the technology companies and lawyers and projects that are available in the trade floor of the ABA Tech Show, which is here in Chicago in the spring.
Excellent.
We've also got another one here.
Oh, wonderful. Great.
Are projects required to be completed in one semester, or do they continue over and new students take over the next semester?
We've done a couple of projects where a second student took over. Most of the time, we've handed off projects that are like 80 or 90% done to the legal aid organization that is our customer or our expert partner in the first semester. And then for about half of the projects, students have signed up for a second semester and continued on working on their project until completion in that second semester.
Let me add that if you choose, actually I want to ask you all a favor. You've hung on this long. If you choose, even after this presentation and reading the RFP requirements and things, not to submit an RFP, if you choose not to, I would really appreciate if you would just drop me a note as to why. What I'm asking for here is how can we make this process better, as we iterate it in the future, because we know that we're only at the beginning points, working to build something that's easy for clinical faculty, law faculty to use and work with. And we know that we're going to have to improve and smooth the rough edges as we go. And your feedback, even on just the sort of the application process, would be immensely valuable. And I would be delighted if you could do that. So long enough pregnant pause, and I also want to thank you for participating. The deadline is Thursday, which since we didn't give a time, that means Thursday midnight. Feel free to send me an email at any time, and I'll happy to call and talk with you if that's something that you would like. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Andrew.